Welcome to my bleak exploration of Auschwitz and Auschwitz II, Birkenau, symbols of unimaginable suffering during World War II. In this brief video, I visit 2 concentration camps and reflect on our past while delving into the history of the Second World War, the living conditions in the camps, and what happened here. These camps wouldn't be engraved on each of our minds if atrocities didn't take place here, but sadly huge suffering took place where I find myself today. To understand the significance of Auschwitz, we must first look at the broader context, World War II. World War II was a global conflict shaped by political ideologies and territorial ambitions. The rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime in Germany led to a devastating war that engulfed all of Europe. World War II, often referred to as Europe's Brother Wars, was a devastating conflict that engulfed the continent from 1939 to 1945. It witnessed nations with deep historical, cultural, and geographical ties pitted against each other in a brutal struggle for dominance. The war tore apart families and communities as brothers found themselves on opposing sides of the conflict. It was a tragic reminder of how political ideologies, territorial ambitions, and a thirst for power could lead to the ultimate tragedy of brother fighting against brother. The scars of this conflict still resonate in the collective memory of Europe, serving as a poignant reminder of the importance of peace, unity, and diplomacy in preventing such catastrophic conflicts in the future. And yet, as we watch this, we know full well that this can still happen, and still does. As nations butted heads, encouraged by the banksters and the political movers, the people on the ground were encouraged to see differences between each other. Europeans were taught to hate their fellow man. Communists were pitted against fascists. Hatred of those not from one's race was encouraged and flamed. Anti-Semitism was rife throughout Europe, and racial purity and eugenics was encouraged in certain circles. Internationalists butted heads with nationalists, and war sparked into action, much to the glee of the sleazy, underhand banksters who invested in War Inc. and were ready for the fire sale of assets that was to come. Auschwitz, located in Nazi-occupied Poland, was put into action as a concentration and extermination camp by the Nazi regime during the Second World War. The decision to establish Auschwitz as a significant site of mass murder was made by high-ranking Nazi officials, including Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich. It officially became operational in 1940, initially serving as a concentration camp for political prisoners, dissidents, and other targeted groups. However, it evolved over time into one of the most notorious extermination camps, particularly Auschwitz II, Birkenau, where the systematic genocide of Jews and others took place en masse. The horrors of Auschwitz were a chilling example of the depths of human cruelty during the Second World War. Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II Birkenau were constructed as Nazi concentration and extermination camps during World War II. The buildings at Auschwitz were designed and constructed with the primary purpose of imprisoning and, in many cases, exterminating people deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. This included the Jews, Romani people, political dissidents, and others. Auschwitz I was the original concentration camp, established in 1940. It was initially built to house Polish political prisoners. The camp consisted of brick barracks and administration buildings. Some of the barracks had been pre-existing Polish army barracks that were repurposed by the Nazis. The main entrance to Auschwitz I featured the infamous Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free sign. The camp included watchtowers, electrified fences, and guard posts to ensure the strict control over the inmates. Over time, the camp expanded, and more buildings were added to accommodate the increasing number of prisoners. Auschwitz II, known as Birkenau, was constructed near Auschwitz I in 1941 and became the primary site for the mass extermination of inmates. Right behind me is the concentration camp Birkenau. Connected to the Auschwitz that we know so well, this housed and killed far more than we can possibly imagine. But all we know is life was hell for anyone living there, and life was hell for anyone liberating
anyone found there.
Unlike Auschwitz I, Birkenau was mostly made up of wooden barracks, which were cheaper and quicker to construct. These barracks were known as the barracks or stables. Birkenau included several large crematoria and gas chambers where mass killings took place. These facilities were disguised as shower rooms to deceive the victims. The camp had extensive railway tracks leading directly into the camp, facilitating the efficient transport of prisoners to their deaths. The construction of Auschwitz was carried out under brutal conditions and often involved forced labor from the prisoners themselves. The camp's infrastructure was designed to facilitate the systematic persecution and the extermination of its inmates.
As you can see, a typical barracks, and this chimney stack, and there's one on each end, one here and one over here, would supposedly heat the entire place. So you would load wood or any fuel that you could get hold of into here, and then the hope would be the heat would sort of distribute itself throughout the entire building. But obviously I don't think there was glass. Maybe there was, but I don't think there was, and it would just be awful, and people would be sleeping on top of each other, not just two to a bed, but half a dozen on each section, and then sometimes they'd collapse on top of each other. The stench would be obscene. You'd learn to block it off after a while.
Auschwitz is a tragic symbol of the Holocaust, where too many innocent people lost their lives. Today it serves as the memorial and a museum to remember the victims and educate future generations about the horrors of the Second World War and the Holocaust. The journey into Auschwitz often began with the roundup of targeted groups, primarily but not exclusively Jews. Families were torn apart as they were forcibly removed from their homes and transported to concentration camps by train. The conditions in the overcrowded cattle carts were beyond inhumane. Upon arrival at Auschwitz, prisoners faced the chilling selection process. SS officers decided who would live and who would die. The infamous Dr. Joseph Mengele conducted cruel experiments on his prisoners and contributed to the selection process. Life within the camps was characterized by extreme hardship. Prisoners were crammed into overcrowded barracks, subject to forced labor, and given meager rations. Sanitation was beyond appalling, leading to rampant diseases. Those prisoners lucky enough to be forced into the grueling labor toiled in the factories, mines, and construction projects. These men, and it was almost exclusively men, endured harsh conditions and mistreatment. The work was meant to exploit and dehumanize them. Survival often depended on being selected for labor rather than the immediate death in the gas chambers. Or to the firing squads. This arbitrary and horrifying process haunted the prisoners daily. While prisoners endured unimaginable suffering, the SS personnel and guards enjoyed better living conditions, access to food, and many privileges. The stark contrast between the lives of the guards and the prisoners is one of the most chilling aspects of the Holocaust. The process of body disposal at Auschwitz involved crematoria equipped with multiple ovens. Cremating one body took 1 to 2 hours. The sheer scale of the operation is difficult to comprehend. To dispose of such large numbers of bodies, Auschwitz had several crematoria equipped with ovens. The number of ovens and the capacity varied in different parts of the Auschwitz complex, but here's a general overview, just to get your head wrapped around the immensity of the operation. Auschwitz I was the original camp and had a smaller crematorium. Crematorium 1 simply had 2 ovens, which you can see here. This crematorium was not capable of handling the volume of bodies previously mentioned. However, Auschwitz II in Birkenau This was the largest part of the Auschwitz complex and had several crematoria. Crematoria 2, 3, 4, and 5 each had 15 ovens, for a total of 60 ovens in Birkenau. These crematoria were designed to handle the mass murder of prisoners and were used for this purpose during the Second World War. The capacity of each varied, but on average, each oven could cremate approximately one body every 1.5 hours, which is 16 bodies per day. So with 60 ovens, with no breaks, it would be possible to cremate approximately 960 bodies per day. At a rate of 960 bodies a day with no breaks, that's 1,146 days to cremate 1.1 million bodies, assuming each oven can handle 16 bodies per day. Now please keep in mind that this calculation simplifies something complex and astonishingly horrifying. In practice, the operation of the crematoria was not continuous, and in many other factors, including the disposal of ashes and the disposal of bodies by other means, also played a role in the process of handling the victims of the Holocaust. The numbers mentioned here are for illustrative purposes and should not be taken to be a precise representation of historical events. The numbers and details are based on extensive historical research and documentation by Holocaust scholars and institutions. Amidst the profound darkness of Auschwitz and the other concentration camps, there were remarkable acts of resistance and extraordinary displays of courage exhibited by the prisoners. In the face of unimaginable suffering, individuals and organized groups often risked their lives to resist the repressive Nazi regime. Some prisoners clandestinely documented the horrors they witnessed, using hidden diaries, sketches, and photographs to bear witness to the atrocities. These testimonies, though perilous to create, provide crucial historical records that shed a light on the depths of human cruelty. Additionally, acts of sabotage, small-scale revolts, and attempts to escape were courageous manifestations of the resistance against the oppressors. Prisoners, knowing the risks, supported one another, forming bonds of solidarity that provided emotional and physical support in the most dire circumstances. Whether it was for sharing meager rations, offering comfort to the sick and dying, or simply offering words of encouragement, these acts of humanity, amidst the inhumanity, were powerful reminders of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable adversity. The crucial chapter of Auschwitz liberation and the culmination came at the end of the Second World War. As the Allied forces advanced through Europe, they began liberating the concentration camps, revealing the harrowing extent of the Nazi atrocities. The liberation of Auschwitz by Soviet troops on January 27, 1945, marked a turning point in the history of the Holocaust. However, it was not an instant end to the suffering, as survivors faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives amidst the physical and emotional scars. The end of the Second World War brought a reckoning with the perpetrators of their heinous crimes during the Nuremberg trials, yet the most profound legacy of this dark period in history is the importance of remembrance. We must remember the victims, their stories, and the collective responsibility to ensure such horrors are never repeated. Museums, memorials, and education efforts around the world stand as a testament to this commitment, reminding us that we have a duty to honor the memory of the victims and to strive for a world rooted in tolerance, understanding, and peace. As we draw near an end of our exploration of Auschwitz and Auschwitz II Birkenau, it is imperative that we reflect on the profound suffering that transpired within these walls. The Holocaust stands as an indelible testament to the depths humanity can descend into when hatred, prejudice, and indifference prevail. It was here that the darkest aspects of human nature were laid bare. As innocent lives were systematically destroyed in the name of malevolent ideology, the Holocaust reminds us that discrimination and intolerance can lead to unimaginable horrors and devastation of countless lives. It serves as an unyielding warning against the complacency that allows such atrocities to unfold. By remembering the victims and bearing witness to their stories, we commit ourselves to ensuring that lessons of history are never forgotten. Only through remembrance and steadfast commitment in peace, tolerance, and empathy can we strive to prevent the recurrence of such profound suffering and tragedy.
It's been so windy today, it's not been worth talking to the camera like I would normally do. I think the narration over the camera makes more sense. This is the highest point.
Thank you for joining me on this emotional and educational journey. If you found this video informative, please like, share and subscribe. And let's continue to remember the victims and work towards a world of tolerance, understanding and peace. Until next time, keep progressing. I'll see you in the next video.